Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
We all carry the scars as we grow up, and that can come from something as awful as being beaten as a child by your parents, or it could be something as small as that time you were 10 years old, but you still wet the bed one night and your parents didn't respond in the best way.
Even though someone might find a way forward through those dark times don't go away. So you still carry the scars of that. We all do that through life, don't we? But often with some people, you don't get to see the scars, or they're very well covered up.
You carry that around with you, I think, when you haven't been the one that followed the same route as, say, your brothers and sisters, and you are the different one. That often makes you try harder. It often makes you feel like maybe you don't quite match up with other people.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday.
Home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name's Mick Coyle. I hope you're well. Thanks for checking out the podcast once again. And thank you for your feedback once again for last week's episode, LGBT History Month. This month, the month of February 2022, we had a really fascinating conversation with Emma and Chris Martin, the CEO of The Mix, talking about representation of LGBT communities. And actually, this week's conversation is essentially a follow-on with a writer of a new show, which is coming to the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool in the month of March 2022, called Cherry Jezebel. The writer is called Jonathan Larkin, and he's going to be talking through portraying and representing people and faces and voices on stage in a way which is real, in a way which gives people a real sense of what people actually go through. And the fact that when we see people up on stage or on screen, they are rounded individuals with backstories, with things that have actually happened to them that shape where they are. And of course, there's a wider conversation to have around representation of LGBT, but there's plenty in this conversation as well around things like toxic masculinity, abuse, things that have happened to people in the past that stay with them for many, many months, many, many years, and then play out in different aspects of their life later on in life. So it's a really interesting show. Apparently this show as well is it's a little bit raw, it's a little bit rude, and it's a little bit raucous, but I've got a feeling that people who head on down there, particularly those who are big into the clubland scene, are really going to enjoy it. Everymanplayhouse.com is where you can get the tickets. There are some 2-for-1 tickets on there as well at the moment, courtesy of the National Lottery. So an opportunity there for people who maybe don't often go to the theatre or haven't been since the pandemic to head on out there. Jonathan Larkin is his name. Cherry Jezebel is the name of his play, coming to the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool. We started by talking about where Cherry was at the very start of the play.
Yeah, so the play opens. So the character's called Cherry Brandy. She's a drag queen called Cherry Brandy. When she's a he's Stanley, so he's a cis gay man who drags up. And Cherry Brandy, we start the play with Cherry receiving an Icon Award from the local Pride. So I've called it Mersey Pride. So it's an Icon Award. So it's like a lifetime achievement for being fabulous and being on the gay scene for so long. Everybody knows Cherry because the door's always open. You can come around and have a gossip, tell her all your worries. And, she's seen as a bit of a fairy godmother of the scene, really. So we find it on a real high. And she talks about how wonderful her life's been and how the first time she tried on a dress was when she was like 8 years old, and she put her sister's communion dress on. And a dad and brothers who are rough Evertonians came home from a match and found her in the dress, but they were really supportive and were wonderful, and it all went really swimmingly, and she's had a great life ever since then. And then the play basically pulls that apart and tells us it's all a load of rubbish, and she's actually the survivor of terrible trauma.
So we were just talking last week on the podcast through LGBT History Month about representation and about how anyone growing up as a member of the LGBT community often doesn't see or find true representation in things like the media, certainly within their own families or often within their own communities. So I guess when you're going to portray someone like Cherry's story on stage, it's got to be multi-layered, isn't it? It's got to have more than one sort of angle to it, because people's lives are complex and complicated, and we all come from slightly different places and find ourselves where we are today from a whole range of experiences.
Yeah, we all carry the scars as we grow up, and that can come from something as awful as being beaten as a child by your parents, or it could be something as small as that time you were 10 years old, but you still wet the bed one night and your parents didn't respond in the best way. You could carry scars from something massive or something small that have an effect throughout your life. And that's kind of what I'm trying to show with Cherry, and also show how, we all go through life experiencing awful things as well as good things, and it's how we respond to them. And it's about how, if you don't confront the demons from the past, they can haunt you for the rest of your life, and they can make you make very poor decisions and be very self-destructive. That's kind of what Cherry does throughout her life.
Yeah, and actually, we're talking on a mental health, program here. So let's bring that into it. That actually, how we view the world and how we perceive the world affects the way, of course, it impacts us as well. But when that changes, it's a real challenge for us, isn't it, to be able to think, right, well, how am I equipped to deal with this change? What are the sort of challenges then that Cherry will face that we'll see on stage?
On stage, we'll see. So Cherry basically has built this whole persona all around herself. So she's, as I say, fairy godmother of the scene. Everybody loves her. She's a legend, but she's actually she's a wounded person, really. And so, but what she does is she builds armor, whether that's with the makeup, the wigs, the brassy one-liners, the dirty jokes, the lip sync to Dusty Springfield, whatever it is, it's all armor. And she relies on the illusion that she creates. She also relies on her best friend Heidi, and this kind of plot of the play, if you will, is that their friendship is coming to an end because Heidi is a trans woman as well as a drag queen, and is finally ready to embrace the fact that, you know what, I'm a trans woman. This is my true self. This is how I'm going to live my life. But Cherry sees that as, oh, so you don't need me anymore. And it's about the crumble. So it's about the friendship crumbling, but also the world that Cherry's built around her crumbling. So we see her act out in various ways, whether it's, it's lashing out at Heidi and being horrible to her, or it's trying to be, becoming best friends with a new young queen on the scene, thinking you're a replacement for Heidi. And it's also Cherry's stuck in a constant cycle of meeting the wrong men, bringing the wrong men home. They usually will, have a night of passion and then leave after, usually turning aggressive because they're full of self-loathing as well. And Cherry carries emotional scars, but she also carries physical scars because of the amounts of abusive men she's been with in throughout her life. And we see her repeat that cycle throughout the play. And, I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but she does learn a few little lessons as she goes along. So it's all about that kind of thing. It's about growth as well. And what I didn't want to do was tie everything up with a big pink bow at the end, because that's not the way life goes. That's not what happens. So she doesn't have some big epiphany and go, oh, I'm going to be completely different from now on, because that's not what we do. We hopefully learn from our mistakes and we make little changes as we go along. So yeah,
absolutely. And actually, so interesting you say that. And it's almost a relief, isn't it, when you hear that it's not going to have and then the actual fairy godmother arrives and and taps the one that everything's fine. Because actually, even in those circumstances, those abusive relationships still happened. Though the dark times, even though someone might find a way forward through those dark times don't go away. So you still, as you mentioned there, still carry the scars of that. We all do that through life, don't we? But often with some people, you don't get to see the scars, or they're very well covered up, either sort of metaphorically or literally, as we'll see with the sort of Cherry in the drag act.
Yeah, completely. And it's about what I've always thought important about in dealing with my own mental health, as well as being there for friends and stuff, is it's about how you learn as you go along, and how you learn to deal with it, and how you sort of start to be able to roll with the punches a little bit better. And then there are some days where you go, do you know what? I'm not equipped to be an adult human. I don't know what's going to happen. If I can't handle the fact that I can't find the remote for the TV, then how am I going to handle the fact that like a close relative might pass away? Or, that's part of like anxiety, isn't it? You're constantly worrying about whether you can handle something or not. But actually real life means that you do sort of handle it as you go along. You often surprise yourself with the inner strength that you've got.
Yeah. And of course, and that's what happens in life, isn't it? You know, if your life was just this like one jolly show where everything was like absolutely sweetness and light, people then would be completely ill-equipped to deal with anything. Like, you know, like a red stoplight that just appears in front of you at the wrong time. You wouldn't know how to handle it because you go, everything's always just been on green for me. I think there's almost a perception, and I don't know if it comes out of like growing up in a world where when you're a child, you presume that when you become an adult, like on the 18th birthday or the 16th birthday or the 21st birthday, there'll be like a switch and you'll wake up and you'll be wearing a tie. Like, and you're like, I understand and see everything now. But as you get older, you realize that like, you're 20, look by your 20s and you think, I didn't know anything in my 20s, but I was dying to be into my 20s because I knew that the 20s would be the time where I could do X, Y, or Z. Now as I'm getting older, I'm into my 40s, you know, as of next year. And I'm still thinking, and I'm still learning now. Like I look back at myself now when I was 36 and go, stupid kid, like what were you saying that for? What were you doing that for? And I think that idea that we are all on a journey and we all have time to learn and should make time to learn is a really, really strong lesson to take home.
It's true. I mean, what I've done is I've written a play that's got an ending, but the ending, what I've tried to do is give people a satisfying finish to that part of the story, but also say, guess what? In real life, there isn't the ending until you know, whenever it is you shuffle off the mortal coil. But whatever you're experiencing there and then, it feels like the end of the world, but it's not, because tomorrow something else is going to happen that might be better or might be worse, but you're going to keep rolling. Nothing is finite. Everything changes at one point or another. Nothing stays constant for me personally. I you know, that's one of the lessons I've learned, is that, you know, if you're having a really bad time of something going on in your life, it's the knowledge that, okay, this is awful, but this time in a few weeks, I'm probably going to feel a bit better about it. I'm probably going to be able to look back on this and go, oh yeah, I'll never do that again, or I'll never respond in that way again. You know, we just sort of keep going. That's what human beings do. And I think it's an important message to get out there, is that, you know, it's things might not go the way that you'd expect them to. The 99% of the time, they will not go the way you expect them to, but you will keep going either way.
Friendship, and you touched on Heidi, Cherry's friend in the play. Friendships is another of those ideas, which, again, when you're growing up, you presume that the friends that you had from school will literally be like your best mates for the rest of your life. And again, there comes a certain point, isn't there, in life where people's life decisions, geographically or otherwise, maybe take you in slightly different directions. And that might be things like starting a family or not starting a family, or moving for a job somewhere or not, and getting a dog, not getting, all of those things kind of can separate you from certain people. And there'll always be friends you can always bump into and you'll always have a great catch up. But I think that's another thing. We've got to be a little bit open to the idea that actually there may be friendships which don't necessarily end, but they're just complete. They served all the purposes they were required to serve up to a certain point. But then at that point, they were complete. And new friends will come, but you've got to almost put yourself in a position to find those. And I guess you tackle that issue on stage, which is a really brave thing to do, because I think there's a lot of people who'll be in the audience who are probably thinking, oh yeah, this actually relates me to, you know, situations I've found with friends that I've got, but who actually now we're completely different.
People come in and out of your life for a reason. I often find that it's often to teach you lessons about yourself and how you deal with other people. And a lot of the time, those lessons are harsh. You know, you can't. One of the harshest lessons in life is that you can't control what other people are going to do or feel or say. You know, it's not your responsibility. So there is that. But yeah, it's hard, and the play does deal with that, because you've got very long-standing friendship. So Heidi and Cherry have been mates for almost 40 years, really, and that is coming to an end. But then in the middle of that, then another character, Pearl, who is a 20-year-old, very much Gen Z, non-binary queen who speaks in a completely different language to Cherry and Heidi, comes crashing into the middle of that family that's crumbling. And at first, Pearl smashes it to bits. Pearl is the person who comes in and goes, I know the subtext of everything you two are saying. I know what's going on here. You're going to break up as friends. And Pearl is an absolute monster. But by the end of it, Cherry and Pearl realise actually we've got more in common than we thought. So from the sort of ashes rises a new queer family of Cherry and Pearl moving forward. So it's kind of there to say that, yeah, you just don't know what's going to happen next. And, you know, you could have, you know, I've experienced it myself, where you think a friend's going to be in your life forever, but then they will make a decision, you will make a decision that doesn't fit well, it doesn't fit with you, and you do go separate ways. But I also think, though, it's easy to focus on the negative sides of that and look at the shoulda, coulda, wouldas of what should have been done. But you could also go, that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. However, look at all those wonderful times we had together. Look at all of the laughs we had. You know, all of the times I, you know, pulled you out of a fight outside the G-Bar, all those times I held your hair back while you were vomiting. You know, look at all those laughs you had, because those things aren't erased because something went wrong and you went your separate ways. I also think it's important to think about as queer people as well, moving from school through day jobs in our 20s into our 30s. A lot of the time, and when I say queer people, I mean gay men, lesbians, I also mean allies as well. If you don't conform to a certain standard and all your friends around you are those people who want to settle down and get married and have kids, and that's not your life, you will watch them drift away. They will not be in your life forever. They will become guest stars in your life. That's a reality of it, because a lot of the time, you know, a queer person who doesn't necessarily fit into those jigsaws the way that a lot of straight people do, they do end up being a bit sidelined as they get older. It's, you know, not everyone fits that plan.
When we were talking last week on the program about sort of representation and people from the LGBT community, sort of young, between the ages of 16 and 25, they were saying, when it came to things like media representation, tell us these stories, to give us these journeys. You know, if you've got a character in Hollyoaks, don't let their character just be that they're gay and they're going to have to come out to their parents and that's going to be their storyline. Tell us, just write that off early doors, and then let's just let them live their life. I wanted to ask you about this in terms of when you're putting characters up on stage. Are you? I don't want to use the word baggage, but if you've sort of grown up maybe in a family where you didn't feel comfortable to be yourself, and then you had to sort of then become an adult in a world which wasn't necessarily entirely as friendly as the legislation would have it, you know, pointed out, that those expectations placed on you by family members, grandparents, about having a you know, wife and 2 kids, getting married and doing the quote normal things that normal people do. And then I imagine getting to the point where you're 30s, 40s, there comes with it that sort of not the scar. Well, I guess, you know, the scars of those sort of those fractures where you had to break whatever the expectation was. It wasn't you, so you have to go down a slightly different route, because that's your route for yourself because of who you are. And I wonder whether or not actually that's something which we need to bear in mind, that if people from the LGBT community, but the people from all sorts of different backgrounds, when they've had to ice skate uphill for a lot of their life, there are going to be points where they suddenly have those moments where that might hit them and they might have to deal with that. And it might be a form of grief or trauma or anxiety. But we've got to be mindful of that we make life difficult for lots of different people. We need to understand that when it gets to certain points in their lives, they might not be best equipped to cope potentially emotionally. Is that fair enough?
You carry that around with you, I think, when you haven't been the one that followed the same route as say, your brothers and sisters, and you are the different one. You carry that around with you, and I think that often makes you try harder. It often makes you feel like maybe you don't quite match up with other people. You know, and sometimes, I mean, I think back to like when I came out to my mum and dad, it was quite late on. I was about 19 or 20. And, you know, they responded in a way that was not overly negative, but they had a journey. They had to get used to it. But I never felt hurt by that, because I always thought to myself, well, they had a plan for me. They had a plan for me, but that's only a plan that's been passed down to them as well. And I'm not following that plan, so they don't know how to deal with that. And often as well, when you come out, if you don't then bring home a lovely boyfriend and, you know, you're single for a long time, they just worry, and they listen to rubbish. They believe stereotypes, and they worry about the, you know, what life that their son or daughter is leading. Whereas if you say, oh, by the way, mum and dad, I'm gay, and then the next day you bring home the perfect man, you know, you bring home a Barack Obama or someone, and they're like, oh my God, well, he's fine. He's going to be fine. He's going to be living in a lovely house with a picket fence, and it's going to be, then that makes it easier for them. But again, that doesn't always happen either. But I also think in my experience, a lot of the time, the fact that I'm different has given me a bit of a get out of jail free card with my parents as well. So, you know, me and my husband we don't conform. We're not out there trying to, you know, have kids and all that sort of stuff. So sometimes I feel like you're a bit of a breath of fresh air you can be to your parents, because, you know, they can sort of chill out and have a bit more fun with you as well. You know, so it can go both ways.
The play, Cherry Jezebel, is on at the Everyman from the start of March. The website, everymanplayhouse.com, everymanplayhouse.com. I know you're sort of appealing for people who maybe don't necessarily go to the theatre, but I guess you're also appealing to those people who maybe haven't been to the theatre for a good couple of years because of everything that's gone on. There's a couple of decent offers, by the way, for tickets on the 2-for-1 early doors for the Cherry Jezebel show. But you're trying to get people who maybe are thinking, it's not normally for me, the theatre. Maybe this is the show I'll check out.
We've got we've been rehearsing. So I'm in rehearsals at the moment. We've been rehearsing, and so like music plays a major part in the play. It's set in clubland for a lot of it, so I feel like if you like your club tunes, then you're going to enjoy what's going on here. I feel like, you know, it does cover a lot of heavy issues. It covers toxic masculinity, it covers homophobia, transphobia. It covers, you know, transphobia within the queer community as well. It covers trauma, abuse, all that sort of stuff. But it's set in a gay club toilets for the first act, and the second act is the hangover from hell in a drag queen's bedroom. So it's not miserable. It's funny. It's dirty. It's full of music. There's some dance in there as well. So it has got a bit of a night out vibe going on as well. But I feel like you will come away from it having used your brain as well as everything else. Last year we did a read through, like a rehearsed read through of it. We did like an hour long version. The play is going to be about 2 hours. We did like an hour long version last year, and people were whooping and cheering at certain parts, which may have included the lap dance. People were whooping and cheering, but then they were crying at the end. And what I loved about that, we had 3 performances that were all really chocker, and people were just so relieved. It was between lockdowns. People were just so relieved to be out and be in a space with live theatre where they could laugh and cry and be shocked. So I'm hoping that we're going to just take that to the next level with the full run. I want people to just come out and just really enjoy and embrace being out around people again. And yeah, they're going to have a scream.
Absolutely. You mentioned those you shocked people. Were they kind of like shocked in I wasn't expecting it to go down that route, or is it more you're not going to do sort of jump out scares or anything like that?
No. So yeah, I mean, somebody actually texted me yesterday and said, are there going to be any guns on stage? Because I have a real phobia of guns on stage. I personally have a phobia. I can't, if I know there's a gun in a play or there's going to be a bang, my anxiety through the roof. I'm an anxiety sufferer big time. So there's none of that. You won't be getting a big bang. You won't be getting anything like that. The shocks came from some of the language. It's about a bunch of drag queens in Liverpool. You know, no punches are pulled in this play. No poor taste stone is left unturned. And they were shocked. Yeah, so they were shocked by that. But they were shocked by where it went in terms of the emotion and It's a play from my heart, quite autobiographical in many ways, and it's about love. The message, it sounds that cheesy, but the message is only love can set you free, as the entrance song goes, which the song figures largely in the play as well. Only love can set you free, and it's about that. And you've got 4 very different people who, at the start of the play, are all offending each other, being horrible to each other, and by the end of it, they haven't all learned a big lesson, but you know more about them, and it's a play that says none of us are perfect. Everybody's got good and bad in them. It's how you use it. It's how you move forward that counts.
Absolutely perfect. Sounds like a great ride to go along with. And the fact it's got entrances Set You Free on, the absolute one of the tracks of the 1990s.
And there are more. There are more. I don't want to spoil it too much, but there are more. We did the run through before, and we were crying at the end, and that was the first rehearsal. And somebody described it as being euphoric.
Excellent.
Like people to feel euphoric at the end.
Jonathan Larkin, writer of Cherry Jezebel, coming to the Everyman Theatre at Liverpool. Everymanplayhouse.com is the website where you can find out more about tickets. Everymanplayhouse.com. And Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.